So our first storyteller tonight, he won the theme of fresh at Swallow Hill. The theme was fresh. Let's get the energy nice and high. Got a lot of love for our first storyteller, Eric McNeil, everybody. Eric McNeil, let's hear it for him.
I think I got into teaching for the wrong reason. At the time, I thought I'd gotten through my mom's 5 marriages without much damage. But once I got out on my own, it didn't take long for me to realize that I was missing some important skills. And I figured teaching would force me to find them. The problem was that the one thing I did learn from my mom's 5 marriages was that when things get tough, people give up and leave. And teaching was tough. I constantly thought about throwing in the towel and walking away, and one of my colleagues made me promise to give it at least 5 years before I quit. And I was in the 4th of those 5 years when one of my 8th grade math students walked up and said, "Mr. McNeil, there's a gun in the building." Now, this was the late 80s, before kids started shooting. I didn't want to believe him, so I did nothing. But in my heart, I knew he was telling the truth, because this kid was bussed out to our school from the neighborhoods on the east edge of Washington, D.C., where they were seeing 300-400 murders a year. On days like this, I didn't want to walk away. I wanted to run away. The gun rumor faded. I was picking up a class after lunch, and one of my students was off talking with his friends. "Lawrence, let's go." No response. "Lawrence, let's go." He was ignoring me. I was in my 20s, and I was giving this my best. But back then, my best looked a lot like a kid hiding behind the title of teacher. So Mr. McNeil got in his face. And he was a big kid. He'd been held back a few times. "Lawrence, let's go right now." And he looked down at me in a way that said, "If you ever do this again, I'm going to kill you." So the animal part of my brain told the rest of my brain, never get in this kid's face again. Well, I got a student teacher. I was leaving her alone with this class. She caught me at lunch. "The aide is absent today. Can you join us?" So I stood off to the side of the classroom, and she was working at an overhead projector because she'd learned to not turn her back on this class. And Lawrence was sitting right in front of her, but he was turned all the way around, talking in full voice to the kid behind him. And she was trying to teach over him, but everybody was listening to him, and I could tell she was not going to say anything. And I thought, this is wrong. And in my head I heard, red alert, do not engage. I thought, this is wrong. Do not engage. I got to say something. "Lawrence, turn around and stop talking." And I swear you could hear the class suck in a little bit of air. You could feel the room tighten up. Eyes got a little bigger. The teacher did not skip a beat, but she was watching him out of the corner of her eye, and he kept right on talking. And in my head I heard, "Disengage." And I thought, it's wrong. "Lawrence, turn around and stop talking." He was ignoring me. "Lawrence, turn around and stop talking right now." Because yelling was the only tool in my toolbox. He very coolly, very slowly turned all the way around, and she finished her lesson. Well, I'm rarely absent, but the next day, the student teacher and I had to be out of the building for meetings. And the day after that, as I walked in, first kids and then teachers came up to me saying, "Did you hear what happened yesterday?" "No." "You better go see the principal." I made a beeline for his office. He was waiting for me. He said, "Well, we had a little incident with Lawrence yesterday. When his bus pulled in, the kids came in here yelling, 'He's got a gun, and he's going to shoot Mr. McNeil.'" And I was thinking, what else can I do besides teach? He went on to tell me that he called the police, and nobody, not even the police, believed these kids really saw a gun. But they decided to interview him one at a time, and after a few interviews they said, well, they're all describing the same gun. But by that point they figured Lawrence would have ditched it, so they did nothing. I demanded that Lawrence at least be put in another class. And after the switch, the principal pulled me aside and he said, look, I know this family. The dad's a drug dealer and he's blind. Everybody knows Lawrence holds the gun. And I asked the kids on the bus why he wanted to shoot me. They said, because you dissed him in front of his friends. I decided to stay in teaching. And over the last 30 years, I've filled up that toolbox. And if you dig through there, you'll find this one where I actually have the ability to influence kids without dissing them in front of their friends. And when I tell my students this story, I know they're hearing that when things get tough, sometimes people choose to stay. And I know I stayed for the right reason. I stayed for them. And the thought of walking away hasn't crossed my mind since.
Eric McNeil, everybody.